Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Indie Pop Girl, the podcast for music chat, new releases, hidden gems, and nostalgic deep dives. I am back with another episode in the My Perfect 10 series. I am switching it up this week and bringing you something which really doesn't belong in the indie pop universe, but an album that I love so much. I'll be talking about I Disagree by Poppy. And before we get into the episode, if you enjoy music discussions like this, please consider following the podcast or leaving a like, depending on where you're listening. It really helps the show reach more people, and it means a lot for a small independent podcast like this one. I Disagree is the third studio album by American singer-songwriter Poppy. It was released on the 10th of January 2020 and marked her debut release with Sumerian Records. It is the follow-up to her previous album, Am I a Girl, and EP Choke, both of which saw Poppy dabble in metal. I Disagree is an extension to that metal experimentation, and she labels the new sound as post-genre. The production was handled by Chris Griatti and Zach Savini, and I'm just going to say it now, this record features some of my favourite production. It really is all over the place, and I feel that is the album's charm. You really don't know what is going to happen next. Anyone who is listening and aware of Poppy will know that it's difficult to describe her sound, and you definitely can't put her into one genre category. She is one of those artists who keeps evolving, switches things up, and is definitely not afraid of pushing the boundaries as a female artist. I think that is why I am drawn to her, and Poppy extends her impressive artistry through her artwork and music videos. If you are a regular listener to the podcast, then you might be thinking, Poppy doesn't belong in the indie pop universe. The idea behind my podcast is to showcase my favourite music and new releases, often covering pop and indie artists, and that is also including subgenres relating to pop and indie. Even though nu metal is a genre that I am not necessarily drawn to, there is something about Poppy and her presentation that just pulls me in. What I love about Poppy is that she never fully abandons her pop roots. She incorporates pop melodies, pop structure, and pop production into her projects and cleverly uses them in the metal genre. And I respect her bravery to actually go down a heavier route, especially with Negative Spaces and Empty Hands. I Disagree is proof that the indie pop girl can branch out every once in a while and to cover something which, to be honest, widened my musical palette. I won't go into detail here how I discovered Poppy because I talked about that in my Empty Hands review from this year. So if you want to know more, please do check out that episode. What I will say, and this might sound completely unhinged, but I don't care, is that Poppy is one of my comfort artists. There is something really comforting losing yourself in unhinged chaos with one of her albums. I can just put on my headphones and forget about what is going on around me. Poppy is fierce. Poppy is aggressive. Poppy is fun. And most of all, she injects so much power and versatility into her work. There are so many sides to her, and I love that she doesn't put the synths away, even when she decides to go a lot heavier. Poppy said in an interview with Kerrang, "I've never said my music is metal, but I do listen to that music." I think that sums up I Disagree perfectly. It's her first full gateway into that genre, and she has just evolved with each release ever since. I've wanted to cover this record for so long on the podcast, and I'm so excited that I've finally found the perfect series to cover I Disagree, and I'm so looking forward in sharing this with you. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, I will not be playing clips of the songs, so if you are curious, please support the artists I cover by streaming, downloading, or buying physical copies. Thank you. Track 1, Concrete. The first time that I heard Concrete was through Fernstone's reaction on YouTube. This track gave me proper sonic whiplash in the best way. It is jarring, and you will find yourself saying, "What the fuck?" over and over again. I have absolutely no idea where a song like this would come from. Poppy and her producers completely smashed the ceiling in regards to conventional songwriting and structure. I would imagine that some listeners would be confused by this album and this song in particular, but I am drawn to anything which is a bit weird, and this certainly doesn't play it safe. You know, I would give anything to be a fly on the wall and watch Poppy's studio process. I find it fascinating, and you can hear the musicianship and artistry on display all the way through this record. This track combines so many genres, switch ups, and overall, it's just completely fucking unhinged, and I am here for it. The abrupt transitions in the track reminds me of Rina Sawayama's debut, which was also released in 2020. I really felt that pop music was evolving during this period. Rena and Poppy were not afraid to push the envelope sonically, and to have the guts with mixing pop and metal so effortlessly has to be commended. I think the message of the lyrics is talking about Poppy's declaration of rebirth. The "bury me 6 feet deep" line is Poppy asking to bury her past self, maybe the death of her old internet persona robot identity. Poppy uses food and sweetness motifs, which I think represents Poppy's bubblegum pop of her earlier work. The sugar sweet past is being buried under heavy metal concrete. The chewy chewy yummy 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 line in the chorus is a reference to 1960s bubblegum pop group Ohio Express. Notice how the song shifts before the verse. The darker metal gives way to a Beach Boys inspired instrumental and vocal style. It's completely unexpected, something that you would not think to put together. The production on Concrete is absolutely insane. The way how the instruments are mixed, and Poppy's vocals never sound drowned out. It's all balanced really perfectly, and despite the track's jarring nature, it sounds clean and precise. And listen out for the Brian May style guitar that comes in before the outro. It's absolutely sublime. Track 2, I Disagree. The title track perfectly lays out the conceptual plot of the entire album. Poppy brings in the heaviness from the previous track, but instead of using the Beach Boys as sonic inspiration for the verse, Poppy switches it up and uses electronic trip-hop style beats here, and this keeps the listener completely off balance. Poppy opens up the track by repeating the Japanese phrase, Watashi wa anata ni doshimasen. I apologise in advance if I've completely butchered that, but I wanted to have a go. The rough translation is, I disagree with you, and Poppy really drives the message of this home. I think some of the lyrics, especially in verse 2, is Poppy distancing herself with her collaborator, Titanic Sinclair. They eventually parted ways, and I feel some of the aggression in this record is directly fired to him. I did some reading about their creative relationship, and I am glad that Poppy is free from him because, from what I read, he sounds like an evil, toxic person. It seemed that he manipulated Poppy, and I am glad that she found the strength to break free from him and to grow as an artist. The lines in the chorus of Down, let it all burn it to the ground, we'll be safe and sound, mirrors the visuals in the music video. She is taking control of the situation and her own career and what she wants to do. Poppy pours gasoline over record executives and sets them ablaze. This is so symbolic as it represents Poppy's freedom. She has said that the song will be relatable to people if you have ever felt misunderstood, disrespected, or just not listened to. I really connect to that. It feels like that is the story of my life, and I think that is why I am drawn to Poppy so much. She speaks for all of us, and as the listener, we can give that energy back to her. And I think that is fucking beautiful and proves the power of how music can really make you feel. Track 3, Blood Money. I am familiar with Blood Money. It's a song that I've heard quite a bit, but the overall composition is very complex to get your head around. There is so much going on in the production, and if you aren't used to tracks like this, it will be jarring. Poppy's music has so much replay value anyway, and I guarantee that you will still be discovering little details after many repeated listens. Poppy absolutely throws everything at the wall here. It's chaotic and messy and perfectly matches the lyrical content. It's abrasive with hints of industrial metal and EDM. Think Nine Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson. What I find really impressive is that you can still hear the synths and electronic textures. Nothing sounds muddy, all of the elements are there for a reason. They all support each other, and Poppy's vocals sound fantastic over the top of all the controlled chaos. What makes this album's tracklist so brilliant is how the narrative flows. In the music video for I Disagree, we watch Poppy pour gasoline over music executives and sets them on fire. It's the ultimate act of cinematic arson against her controllers. And in Blood Money, Poppy expands on that, and I feel this track is the immediate aftermath. Lyrically, Poppy touches on religious hypocrisy, but she also explores the dark side of the music industry. The lines of, never forget the excess of a man, because the grabbing hands always grab what they can, is a direct homage to Depeche Mode's 1983 hit Everything Counts, a song about the critique of corporate greed. Poppy targets the grabbing hands of the people who tried to manipulate, control, and take advantage of her career. Poppy herself has confirmed the Depeche Mode homage, and as a fan of both artists, it's always so beautiful to see two worlds that you love so much collide. She is exploring how the music industry operates like a parasite, bleeding artists completely dry for profit, while the grabbing hands take everything they can get. The sonic aggression is turned up to maximum. Poppy has fucking had enough of this shit, and she's taking her control back. What is completely satisfying about this track is that it was nominated for Best Metal Performance at the 2021 Grammy Awards. The nomination made Poppy the first solo female artist ever to be nominated in that category. What an outstanding achievement, and I hope achievements like that continue to open doors for more female artists in rock and metal. That is the biggest fuck you that Poppy could ever deliver to the ones that tried to control her artistry. Track 4, Anything Like Me. This record is stacked with bangers, and it's so difficult trying to pick favourites, as it can vary from day to day. But sonically, Anything Like Me is right up my street. I love the contrast from the aggressive chorus to the complete sonic shift towards the end of the song. One thing that I haven't mentioned yet is Poppy's skill as a vocalist. Her recent releases have seen Poppy emerge as a full-on metal vocalist. And if you are familiar with her later work, then you will know that her screaming range is extremely impressive. But she also knows when to pull back, that she can deliver a softer melodic vocal when it's required. I adore the juxtaposition of the aggression and anger, and then the sonic shift with the acoustic guitar and Poppy's lovely vocal delivery. Lyrically, Poppy is addressing her conflicting feelings during her lawsuit with singer Brittany Sheets, professionally known as Mars Argo, in 2018. Now, I had to look this up so I could fully understand the details, and from what I read, Britney sued Poppy and Titanic Sinclair over the creation of the Poppy Project from the YouTube early days. Poppy defended Titanic until their professional split was confirmed, and then she publicly confirmed that she had suffered the same emotional abuse as Britney. It seems that Titanic likely pitted the two women against each other, and Poppy addresses how the media treated the lawsuit like internet drama, forgetting and ignoring the real human trauma was actually involved. There is some heavy shit being addressed here, and I feel that with this project, Poppy is unleashing her trauma and demons from the past. At the same time, she's also taking control of her career and artistry, experimenting with different genres and sounds, pushing the boundaries of what a pop record could sound like, and finding her lane in the process of emerging into a full-on metal artist. I have to address that heavenly outro. It leans into a brief dream pop moment. Poppy's voice is distant with reverb. The acoustic guitar and electronic elements is just pure ear candy. But don't let this brief moment fool you, because you just know that another switch up is just around the corner. Track 5, Fill the Crown. This is another one of my instant highlights, and the bangers just keep on coming. I love how Poppy is reclaiming her power at the halfway stage in the record, and she's telling herself and the listener, you can be anyone you want to be. You can be free. I find opening up the track in this way is so powerful and empowering. Poppy is freeing herself from past trauma and to just be herself. It's funny because I've been listening to I Disagree quite a lot this week while I have been preparing this episode, and the message of this track made me think of Madonna. Poppy has spoken out before being influenced by Madonna, especially with Poppy's earlier work. Madonna's opening track on Confessions 2, I Feel So Free, talks about finding freedom on the dance floor, surviving your personal pain and trauma, and just being yourself. I think Poppy is exploring the themes of freedom with Phil the Crown, juxtaposing euphoric pop with heavy new metal, and the results are insanely addictive. Not having any restriction over yourself or your own life is incredibly powerful. Poppy is the one fully in the driver's seat, and she doesn't give a fuck what anyone thinks. I'm sure a lot of people have been able to find comfort in that and to relate to the message in your own life. I'm certain that Poppy faced some discrimination for wanting to evolve as an artist, to bring in the heavy metal sound, and to push herself creatively. I have had people being critical and not supportive since I started my podcast. I've been faced with comments like, "Why do you want to do that? Oh, you can't do that, surely." And you know what? That drives me to push on harder. I've wanted to start a podcast for the longest time. And last year I got to a stage in my life where I was like, I am fucking sick and tired of trying to please everyone else in life. I'm going to do something for me, something that brings me joy. And music is what I am passionate about. And I can do it and prove everyone wrong. This fits in with what Poppy is talking about here. She is saying to the listener, just go for it. Achieve your dreams and you can do anything. Don't listen to other people trying to drag you down and telling you that you can't. And if you're listening, believe me, anything is possible. And to have this song with the sick instrumental, production, Metallica style guitars, Marilyn Manson style backing vocals, and electronic elements just gives me the strength and inspires me to work harder and making this podcast and social media content the best it can be. If you're listening right now and enjoying this is your cue to hit like before you forget. I really do appreciate all of the support. Thank you. Track 6, Nothing I Need. As we reach the second half of the record, Nothing I Need feels like a palate cleanser to the chaotic nature of the previous 5 tracks. It was the final song written for the album, and Poppy confirmed that lyrically she wanted to be as honest with herself as much as possible. She said that the song felt like the turning of a page and the closing of a chapter. It feels like the calm before the storm, a deep breath before the chaos kicks in again sonically. From the production and Poppy's ethereal vocal performance, it's a welcome switch up at this stage in the album. Poppy sounds fantastic, her vocals sound crystal clear in the mix. She sounds smooth over the dream pop textures, and I adore the electronic textures used. The sparkling synth that is placed in the chorus when Poppy is singing Take the Ride is magical. The sound is very reminiscent of 1980s synthwave and instantly reminds me of the war on drugs, especially with their I Don't Live Here Anymore title track. I adore tracks that combine synths, electronic elements with acoustic guitars, and this song is the perfect example of that. I really enjoy it when Poppy hops into the synth pop lane and it proves her versatility as an artist. This track could have sounded out of place, but Poppy keeps it balanced so it remains cohesive with the rest of the album. That guitar solo is absolutely insane. It sounds so good, especially on headphones. It's quite understated, but it works so well. It's got the perfect track placement and has grown to be one of my favourite tracks. Track 7, Sit, Stay. God, I love this song so much. It's got so much grit and meat to it, and not 1 second is wasted. It's pure ear candy and a dopamine hit at the same time. I remember watching Fernstone's reaction to the album, and at one point she said that she was feeling emotional. Not because the songs were making her sad or anything, but she was becoming emotional with how amazing everything sounds. And I completely get that. I haven't quite convinced my husband with Poppy yet. He does enjoy some of his songs, which don't go too hard, but he's not a fan of the screaming. I love weird. Anything that is a bit out of the box and songs that tend to morph and shift. And Sit Stay is a perfect example of that. You really don't know where this is going to go, and Poppy keeps you on your toes all the way through. This is the magic about Poppy. She takes you on an unexpected journey with her songs, and it's so unpredictable. You really can't call Poppy's music bland or boring because there is so much flavour injected from start to finish with this album here. I really think the production is the star of the show. It feels like there is something sinister that is building all the way through it, and the attention to detail is off the scale. Poppy explores the music industry theme again in the lyrics, especially with the Godspeed to the radio star, stop the beat when they take it too far line. It feels like she is saying that she doesn't want a career controlled by the label or industry and just churn out generic music just to chase hits. This album is like a statement for Poppy and where she was at personally. And I can imagine it felt very liberating for her creating music like this. The line of "Welcome to the new starting line" feels like Poppy is wiping the slate clean, and this is where her actual independent career begins. The build up to that chaotic outro is one of my favourite moments from the entire record. It's just so satisfying. It's Poppy breaking free of the cage and her raw, unhinged screaming with the drums and guitars feels like her artistic freedom, her release, anger and frustration has spilled over, and it's fucking beautiful. There is just so much creativity on display. The attention to detail, like I've mentioned, and the top notch production all comes together when you listen to this record front to back, and it all makes perfect sense. Track 8, Bite Your Teeth. You know, I talked about chaos in this record. Bite Your Teeth is a prime example of that. It's unhinged, all over the place, and so fucking messy. The extreme rhythmic whiplash will be jarring to you if you aren't familiar, so you have been warned. I'm not usually a fan of lyrical repetition. It just depends on how it's used and if the instrumental and production knock my socks off. And my god, Does this tick all of the boxes? Because there is so much going on with the rapid pace and constant switch ups, you actually forget about the repetition. I think Poppy captures the exhausting pressure of being told to simply push through pain and keep fighting. You obviously can't bite your own teeth, but the lyrics pay homage to a quote by Alan Watts, a British philosopher who inspired Titanic Sinclair's own work. The repetition really drives home the message, and I feel like it plays like a mantra for Poppy. There is a sound effect in the production that sounds like taking a bite from an apple. I thought I was going mad, but you can hear it on headphones. It's very brief, but I love little details like that. Poppy switches it up in the bridge when the production shifts and sings, "Creeps are creeping, teeth are sinking into my teeth." It feels that she is addressing the bad people, the controlling men, music executives, and anyone else who caused Poppy pain. They are simultaneously sinking their teeth into Poppy's career and trying to bleed her dry for profit. The explosive instrumental breakdown is like the break from the claustrophobia and physical and emotional distress. It's Poppy pushing on through the pain, and eventually the storm completely clears. It's monumental, cathartic, and it feels like Poppy has completed her final boss level. Poppy is victorious and makes way for the final two tracks on the album, which shifts gears yet again. The fade out with that synth is just up my street. I love the tone and how effective it is when the track is dying out. It feels like everything is alright, if only for a brief moment. Track 9, Sick of the Sun. The penultimate track on the album is probably the one that is the most complex lyrically. At a glance, Poppy could be talking about being sick of the spotlight and the consequences of fame. That does tie in nicely with the themes explored in the previous tracks. But I think the song also has a double meaning. The laid back production and Poppy's softer vocal approach is a reflection to how she is feeling. Poppy is fucking exhausted. She opens up the song with, "I'm sick of the sun, can't trust anyone, I want it to go away." She isn't screaming in this track whatsoever. My interpretation of the lyrics to me is that Poppy is talking about depression and self isolation. It seems that Poppy is suffering from some extreme sensory overstimulation. That everyone told me that it would get better, but every day feels exactly the same in the bridge. It's very telling that Poppy is talking about the frustration of dealing with a bad depressive episode. I think so many of us who have suffered with depression, anxiety, and other mental health related illnesses can relate to the message of this song. I can connect to it personally. I understand the exhausting feeling of wanting to shut out the world. You tend to not trust people, and therefore you feel safer in your own company. The lack of trust could be down to the trauma of past experiences, or that the paranoia is starting to creep in. I appreciate the personal nature and Poppy opening up here. And talking about the sun, I really struggle during the summer months. I experience sensory overstimulation and I find it completely exhausting. The expectation that summer is great and it's so much fun. It's such bullshit. I crave the dark, colder months, which I find incredibly comforting. Poppy really lets her vocals shine here with some gorgeous reverb, and the acoustic guitar helps to bring the message home. There is some raw human emotion on display in this track, something that I really appreciate from Poppy. Something that I noticed when listening to I Disagree on vinyl this week is that Poppy's vocal tone really reminds me of Sabrina Carpenter. It's something that I've only realised, but it's all I can hear now. Track 10, Don't Go Outside. The timing of the song is incredibly eerie, as I Disagree was released just 2 months before the world went into mandatory COVID-19 lockdowns. There is some sinister but accidental foreshadowing, and Poppy uses apocalyptic imagery, which brings in a darker atmosphere. The guitar tone in the intro is very Led Zeppelin and Metallica inspired. It's quite chill and pleasant, but you just know that with it being the last track on the album, that there is going to be a huge switch up at some point. Poppy is also continuing the themes of depression and isolation from the previous track. She opens up the song with, "Now is not the time to go outside. Crawl back into bed and close your eyes." I mean, the thought of that is seriously tempting, right? But she balances the personal darkness with the apocalyptic imagery. And I love the amphibians are falling from the skyline in verse 2. This is a direct biblical nod to the plague of frogs in Exodus chapter 8. When we reach the bridge, it feels like the track is starting to evolve. The production switches and Poppy repeats, "Everything will be okay." That feels like reassurance to herself and the listener. The repetition like a mantra, and it gives way to the instrumentation fully opening up. And when it does, it is so satisfying. It becomes darker and slightly chaotic. Poppy introduces a mashup of interpolated lines from the previous tracks, I Disagree, Fill the Crown, and Concrete, bringing the record full circle and to wrap up all of the previous themes. This is such clever songwriting, and as the album is approaching its end, Poppy is like, fuck it. The world might be going to shit, and dealing with exhausting depression and self isolation. She is saying, let it all burn down and let whatever happens, happens. Just go with the flow in life and remember, you can be anyone you want to be. And I love that. It feels like the last line on the album is that little glimmer of hope. And I think this outro is for the people listening to the album. Just live your life because life is short and do the things that make you happy. This album is truly a special work of art. Yes, it's fun and messy in places, but at its heart, there is real human emotion present, and that is why it connects with me so much. It's one of those rare albums that I could play on repeat and I would never ever tire of it. It still sounds as immediate and fresh, just over 6 years later. And I think when you look at Poppy's musical evolution, I Disagree feels like such an important moment in her career. She'd already started moving away from the sugary electro pop of her earlier work, But this is the album where she completely tears up the rulebook and refuses to be put into one particular box. It also feels like an incredibly important record in terms of Poppy taking control of her own artistry. And I think you can really hear that freedom throughout the record. Nothing feels compromised. It's bold, confrontational, occasionally completely ridiculous and messy, but it also feels completely committed to its own vision. The critical reception was strong too. The album received generally favourable reviews, and even Anthony Fantano gave it an 8 out of 10. Blood Money's historic Grammy nomination only underlined just how successfully Poppy had crossed into a world nobody could have predicted from her earlier work. But I think one of the things I love most about Poppy is that her music proves you don't have to choose a lane. I love pop and indie music. I always will. But that doesn't mean I only want polished pop songs. Poppy gives me metal, industrial rock, electronic music, pop, dream pop, noise, beautiful melodies, and absolutely crushing guitars and drums, sometimes within the space of a single song. There is so much going on in her music that you can come to it from completely different musical backgrounds and find something to appreciate. And I Disagree arrived in the same year as Rina Sawayama's Sawayama, another record that showed just how exciting pop music can become when you start worrying about where one genre ends and another begins. Both albums throw seemingly incompatible sounds together and somehow make the mass feel completely cohesive. That's the magic of it. 6 years later, I genuinely wouldn't change anything about I Disagree. The chaos is the point. For me, it is a pop metal masterpiece from start to finish. And that's exactly why it had to be part of my perfect 10. This album didn't just give me 10 songs that I love. It honestly changed the way I looked at pop music and helped widen my own sonic palette. It encouraged me to look beyond the genres I already knew I loved and find excitement in heavier, stranger, and more experimental music. And if you haven't heard it, the deluxe edition, I Disagree More, adds another 4 tracks that are absolutely worth your time. So, if Golden Hour by Casey Musgraves from last week showed me that country music could be something completely different from what I'd assumed, I Disagree did something similar from the opposite direction. It showed me that loving pop music doesn't put boundaries around what else I can love. Poppy disagreed with the rules, and I'm very glad she did. I adore Poppy. She has become one of my favourite artists, and I will forever love this record. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you've enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate it if you could follow, like, or share, as it helps other music lovers discover my podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to the Indie Pop Girl podcast. It really helps the algorithm push the video out to more people, and as a small independent podcast that's still growing, every like and subscription genuinely makes a huge difference. I'm posting full episodes, shorts, and little teasers over there, so there's always something new to watch. Let me know in the comments if you love this record and Poppy, and what are your favourite tracks. I always read and respond to comments, and I love hearing what you all think. You can also find me on Instagram and Threads at theindiepopgirl and on TikTok at theindiepopgirl podcast. And if you want to dive even deeper, there's a public Spotify playlist called Favourite Tracks from Podcast Episodes, where I add some of my top picks from each record I cover. It's updated as new episodes drop, so you might just find your next obsession. I will be back next week with another instalment of the My Perfect 10 series. Next up is a record from an artist who I haven't covered on the podcast before, and I can't wait to talk about it. It's experimental, bold, but deeply human, and I'll be teasing this on my socials shortly. Until then, I'm Rachel, the Indie Pop Girl. Thanks for listening, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.